Now, as you know, in your exam, you need to comment on language, structure and form. That's the A02 mark. It's weighted as heavily as the A01 mark. So this is a lyric poem in its poetic form, and in the sense that the words could accompany or were written to accompany a piece of music. The structure of the poem is easy to comment on in the exam. The most obvious thing is it has 3 stanzas, all of 6 lines, so it has a regular structure in that sense. It follows the rhyming pattern AB, 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 and the rhythm of the poem is also highly regular. It doesn't only emphasise how this woman is walking, but also the sheer perfection of this woman. Everything knits together beautifully with her. However, what isn't quite as regular is his extensive use of enjambment. It's almost a breathless admiration for this woman, his eagerness to tell the reader how perfect she is. So we'll move on now to a sort of line by line analysis, and we'll try and draw out for you things that you could comment on in the examination. She walks in beauty like the night. So obviously we start with a simile, and it suggests that her beauty is uncontainable, like the night. It's also unusual. It's an unusual image to use, and suggests the speaker's awe. He needs to compare her to something as vast and uncontained as nature. So it's like she becomes part of beauty in itself. She is in beauty like the night. The poet then goes on to say of cloudless climes and starry skies and all that's best of dark and bright. Now there's some beautiful language use here. He uses alliteration, but it's a very soft alliteration. Cloudless climes, starry skies. It's not a harsh sibilant S, it's a gentle S. He also uses assonance, cloudless, climes, starry, skies, and which sort of draws the line out. It's very gentle, it's very unhurried. And then he makes effective use of contrast, all that's best of dark and bright. So her best features meet to form something even greater in her beauty in the opening lines. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace. This is an interesting image, an interesting feature of the poem, because we've got use of contrast in these lines. Shade is contrasted with ray, and to do with sort of sunlight, and then more and less. So we have the use of that language there. The repeated use of opposites may highlight a sense of confusion because he can't quite quantify what he's trying to describe. It's almost overpowering to him. And he talks about her nameless grace. If she's perfectly balanced is what he's trying to say. If there was a little shade more in something or a little ray less in something else, it would have impaired that nameless grace, that thing he can't quantify, that almost perfect beauty. Where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. Now obviously he moves focus here, and he starts to talk about her mind. So it's a different emphasis. It focuses on the dwelling place of her thoughts. Now obviously your thoughts dwell in your mind, and he uses descriptions like that the thoughts are pure and the dwelling place of those thoughts are dear. This is a focus on her inner beauty, her goodness, her essential purity. So he expresses that in these lines. He also again continues to use that very gentle, very soft sibilance, and we can see the assonance there in the E sounds. Byron describes how her mind is at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. Now, we've already talked about the phrase dwelling place, and that seems to have some religious connotations. This concept of all below also suggests some religious connotations, almost as if she's a higher being than anybody else, and her mind is at peace. That's due to her inherent goodness, the inner beauty of this woman. And he comments clearly on her virtue, her innocence, a heart whose love is innocent. This isn't about, she doesn't lust after anyone, she's not in love with anyone. Everything about this woman is pure and perfectly balanced. So those are a few lines that you could comment on in the examination. Obviously, we have some links. This is about admiration, I would say. It's a poem about love, not lust. He doesn't lust after her. He admires her beauty. So we can link that to Sonnet 43, where the poet responds to a question, an implied question from her husband, how do you love me? In what ways do you love me? And she goes on to describe how she loves him. And here Byron obviously describes how this woman has captivated him, how her beauty has captivated him. We can also talk about that sort of dogged, unflinching love in the manhunt, where Laura Beddoes tries every way to trace her husband's injuries so that she can know him better again, so that she can, and she does continue to love him. And obviously then we've got the slightly less formal, slightly more unusual but very frank and honest Valentine, which explores this theme of love in a different way. So those are the ones that you could link with them. Obviously, the comments that you make about structure and language are going to be very important to your weighting of the mark. So please note that there's a very steady, very unhurried description in She Walks in Beauty as we move through the poem. The serenity of it, the pace of it, suggests that she herself is serene, her movements are slow. So think about the poet's voice in the exam. Make sure you know about 19th century romanticism, and in this poem it's the emphasis on feminine beauty described through nature, but there is that sense of wonder and awe, perfection of mind, soul, body, that he draws, and Byron's obviously fascinated. It almost seems like this woman is otherworldly. Night and how she walks like the night is contrasted with gaudy day, which Byron is suggesting that all states meet perfectly in this woman. So look at the elegance, look at the ease, look at the verbs like waves and lightens. She's pure as well as lovely. And then what aspects attract her to the poet? It's the cheek, the brow. We know his subject, we know what she looks like, but it's also her body language, her personality, her expression that makes her desirable. She doesn't pose, she doesn't boast, she just simply is.